What is going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for joining me. And of course, I'm here to continue my series on my NHL 2021-2022 season predictions. And for today's video, we'll be dissecting the Pittsburgh Penguins and where I feel they stand for this upcoming season. So over the course of the last few years, the Penguins have established themselves as a very solid regular season team. However, they've always seemed to fall short in the playoffs, obviously in that 2020 bubble, losing in the qualifying round to a 12th seeded Montreal Canadiens. However, this Penguins team came back on a mission and they followed it up with a very respectable regular season. So taking a look at last season's numbers, they finished with a 37-16-3 record for a total of 77 points, which was first in the East Division, which was arguably the toughest division in the league. And they were on a 113-point pace over an 82-game season. However, come playoff time, they folded once again pretty early on in the first round, dropping their first round series to the New York Islanders in 6 games. Taking a look at their offensive stats, they were a lethal offensive team, a 3.45 goals for per game, which was second in the league, and a 23.7% power play percentage, which was fourth at usual. Very solid. The defensive stats, not terrible, but not as great. 2.77 goals against per game, which was, middle of the pack at 14th. But their penalty kill really struggled, 77.4%, 27th in the NHL. I mean, this has been the story for the Penguins over the last few years. They've always been one of the better offensive teams in the league. Defensively, more so middle of the pack. But of course, their goaltending was very inconsistent throughout the course of the season. And that turned out to be costly, especially in that first round against the Islanders. Taking a look at the top 5 scorers from last season, their leading scorer being obviously Sidney Crosby. In 55 games, he had 24 goals and 38 assists for 62 points. Now, we all know that Sidney Crosby, the captain of this Penguins team, been the face of the franchise, the face of the league really for, the better half of the last 15 years. Really, he's still got it. He's an elite player, probably a top 3 player still, at least in my opinion. He's still going to give you solid production, average about over a point per game. He's going to come back with vengeance this season for sure, even though his age might start to take a toll on him in the coming years. Then at second, we have Jake Guentzel, who had a very good season himself, 23 goals, 34 assists for 57 points. Jake Guentzel is just a very solid winger, very underrated. I mean, he plays with Crosby, so that can definitely help. But at the same time, we all know that he can hold his own. I mean, he's a very solid playmaker, and he's got a ton of goal-scoring upside. I mean, he had a 40-goal season once and definitely can score well over 30 goals in a full season. Then at third, we have Chris Letang, who in 55 games had 7 goals and 38 assists for 45 points. Letang being one of the core guys, their number 1 defenseman, maybe a little bit on the older side as the rest of the core, but he's still a very solid offensive defenseman, and he produces great numbers, and I would expect more of the same, I think. Fourth, we got Brian Rust, who in 56 games had 22 goals and 20 assists for 42 points. Solid winger. It's really just been his coming out party over the last couple of years. He's really stepped up his game offensively, and he's a guy that you should expect, 20 plus goals every single season, especially playing with elite offense around him like Sidney Crosby on the top line, or maybe with Evgeny Malkin as well. And then at fifth, we have Jared McCann, who stepped up relatively solidly when Malkin went down with injury in that top 6. 43 games for him. He had 14 goals and 18 assists for 32 points. Like I said, stepped up, was a very surprising piece for this Penguins team. And let's see if he can continue this production in Seattle. As for the goaltending, I mean, their starting goaltender was Tristan Jarry. 39 games. He had a 25-9-3 record, very solid, but a 2.75 goals against average and a 909 save percentage. Kind of average to me. I mean, I still think Jarry has a ton of upside to be a really good goaltender in this league. It's just throughout the course of the year, just very inconsistent. I mean, he had a rough start to the season. I think, second half, I thought he was a lot better. But obviously, come playoff time, I mean, his play was just atrocious against the Islanders. And in my opinion, it really cost him that series. So entering this season, I feel like there's a lot of mixed feelings in terms of where the Penguins stand this upcoming year, especially being in a tougher Metropolitan division. A lot of people can see this team, as getting older and being on the decline and potentially falling out of a playoff spot. And there's others who think, there's still a very solid team that should easily make the playoffs. Now, in terms of what they did in the offseason, I mean, they did get a little bit weaker in terms of their depth. And their one addition would be Brock McGinn, who, I mean, is not an amazing player, but at the same time, he's still fairly solid in a bottom 6 role. Good depth piece. But in terms of what they lost, I mean, they lost more in their depth. Jared McCann was very solid from them last season, playing, third line center, second line center. He stepped up as well when Malkin went down. That has a bit of a key loss that's going to hurt their depth a little bit, as well as Brendan Tanev, who was very solid third line guy, was just a very nice, gritty forward for this team, a very impactful player. And of course, they lost Cody Ceci, who, I mean, a lot of people have really shat on him for being a terrible defenseman, But honestly, in Pittsburgh last season, he was fairly solid. Let's see if we continue that in Edmonton. But yeah, that's a little bit of a loss in the blue line, I guess, especially that blue line for the most part, not super experienced. Yeah, overall, I would say that this team probably is a little bit weaker in terms of what they lost. And there is some question marks moving forward. I mean, like I said, they lost some depth and, goaltending might still be a question mark. It's going to be very interesting to see what this Penguins team does this year. So for my predictions and my top 5 scores for the Penguins this season, in first, I got to go with Sidney Crosby, who I will have playing 78 games with 31 goals and 57 assists for 88 points. Now, this is assuming he does miss the first few games of the season. I mean, it was been reported that he's going to miss training camp due to that wrist injury, would be out for about 6 weeks or something. So that could take him to missing the start of the season. So that's roughly what my expectations are, how many games he plays. If he plays the rest of the season, obviously, but still should be about over a point per game. I mean, it's Crosby. He's still an elite player. And until otherwise, he will be above a point per game. Maybe he's not the 100-point player he once was. He could be past the peak of his career, but still is going to be very effective and going to be a key contributor to this Penguins team this season. No question. In second, I'm going to go with Jake Guentzel, leading the team in goals with 36 as well as 43 assists for 79 points. You can make the case that maybe this is the best winger that Crosby has ever played with over the course of his career. I mean, he's extremely skilled, still relatively young. We know he can score 30-plus goals. I mean, he's already proven he can do that. And he should definitely hover around a point per game. I mean, he was over a point per game last season. So especially with the solid playmaking around him, with the solid offense like Crosby, Malkin, Letang, especially if he's to be utilized on that power play, there's going to be a ton of offense that he's going to provide. He should hover around a point per game. So I feel like, knocking on the door of 80 points seems relatively fair, I would say. Third, I'm going to go with Evgeny Malkin, scoring 24 goals and 47 assists for 71 points. For number 71. After recording this video, the latest I've heard is that he's recovering from that knee surgery and he's probably going to miss training camp. Now, it's very possible that he does miss a good chunk of the start of the season, but up to this point, there has been no update on how much time he's supposed to miss. So as of right now, I'm going to assume that he plays a full 82, but I mean, it's Malkin. He gets injured every year, so that's probably unlikely. But anyway, I still feel like Malkin's a great center. I just feel like his durability and his age might start to take a toll on him. I still feel like he'll produce pretty well, but I feel like maybe he takes a little bit of a dip in his production, the point per game days might be over for him. Fourth, I'm going with Chris Letang to score 11 goals and 45 assists for 56 points. I mean, until proven otherwise, he is still a great offensive defenseman. I mean, he quarterbacks that power play that has been lethal over the past decade plus. So, he should probably get around 50-plus points. I mean, that's basically who's been averaging over the course of his career. Fifth, I'm going with Brian Rust, 28 goals, 25 assists for 53 points. Just a great complimentary piece on that top 6. Great goal scorer, has been proven to be 25-plus over the course of these past couple of years. He should be solid for about 50-ish points on that top line, or on a second line of Evgeny Malkin, who can still elevate him offensively. So in terms of where I see this Penguins team, I know there's a lot of people who are skeptical and they can say, oh, this year's finally the year where they're going to start to decline. And that could be very well the case. But for me, I still feel like they have a solid enough team around them. And until I see it, I still think they're a playoff team. With that, I'm going to say that they finished third in the Metropolitan Division with a 46-29-7 record for a total of 99 points and making the playoffs. Now, in terms of what they do in the playoffs, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe their window has closed to win a Stanley Cup. But in terms of the regular season, this is still a very good team, and I feel like they should still make the playoffs, even though, like I said, some people might have written them off based on, them getting older and not being the team that they once were. I just need to see it to believe it that they are declining, and I'm not convinced that they are. I mean, I've written them off the last couple of years. Admittedly, I have picked them to miss the playoffs the last 2 seasons, and they've proven me wrong. So, you know what? I'm not going to do that this year. Until it happens, I'm just going to say, they're going to make the playoffs. I'm going to play it safe. So that's going to do it with my season expectations on the Pittsburgh Penguins this season. Do you agree with me and you still think this is a solid regular season team and they should make the playoffs in that Metropolitan Division? Or could you legitimately see the argument where they fall out of the playoffs because of that tough Metropolitan Division and given the core getting a lot older? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like on this video. Consider subscribing to the channel and I will talk to you in the next one. See you guys later.